stuck in the mode of Hindi movies, singing.
Hi, everyone. It's Goddess Rhonda, Goddess Star, and our awesome guest, Jack Mercer, with the Priestess View show tonight on this wonderful Memorial Day. Happy Memorial Day to all of our vets and everyone out there today. Hope you had an awesome day. And so, as always, we do have our Goddess Star with us, who's looking very lovely in her pink robe, her pink tie on.
I know, right? Thank you. Thank you.
Very pretty.
Hi, everyone, and happy Memorial Day as well. I hope
And
you
we
guys
also
enjoy your
have,
weekend.
and we also have the very way cool Jack Mercer, who is joining us by phone tonight. Say hi, Jack.
Hello, hello, happy Memorial Day.
Awesome. So as usual, before we begin, we like to cast a circle of protection around us. Let me give that a little more juice.
I've been having smudge sticks issues lately too.
Yeah, sometimes they bind them a little too tightly. Okay. All hail, our lords and ladies of the East, our brothers and sisters, our brother and patron, the sacred element of air, namaste. Divine honor, love, joy, peace, and respect to thee. I charge thee, please cause a barrier of protection through all of our walls that face your direction. From corner to corner and end to end, let peace and protection reign herein. Thank you. So it is. So mote it be.
So mote it be.
So mote it be.
All hail our lords and ladies of the South, my brothers and sisters, my brother and patron, the sacred element of fire. Namaste. Divine honor, love, joy, peace, and respect to thee. I charge you, please cause a barrier of protection through all of our walls that face your direction, from corner to corner and end to end. Let peace and protection reign herein. Thank you, and so it is, so mote it be.
So mote it be.
So mote it be. All hail, excuse me, our lords and ladies of the West, our brothers and sisters, our sister and patron, the sacred element of water, namaste. Divine honor, love, joy, peace, and respect to thee. I charge thee, please cause a barrier of protection through all of our walls that face your direction. From corner to corner and end to end, let peace and protection reign herein. Thank you. So it is. So mote it be.
It is.
So mote it be.
All hail our lords and ladies of the North, my brothers and sisters, my sister and patron, the sacred element of earth. Namaste. Divine honor, love, joy, peace, and respect to thee. I charge you, please cause a barrier of protection through all of our walls that face the direction, from corner to corner and end to end. Let peace and protection reign herein. Thank you, and so it is, so mote it be.
So it is, so mote it be. And we now bring down the divine white light from the sacred source of all well-being and fill all of our spaces with peace and protection always. So it is, so mote it be.
So it is.
So mote it be.
All righty, so we are back, and we decided to do this show. I wanted to start doing inspirational shows, adding some inspirational shows, because right now we've got so many planets still in retrograde, and some are still coming. Neptune is coming, Uranus is coming in August, but we're already in those pre-shadows, so they're already beginning to affect us. And plus, we're already starting to feel the energies of the upcoming eclipse in August. We still have Jupiter in retrograde. The big boy in town right now is Pluto retrograde, which can really bring up all of your fears and your phobias and your old memories that you've never gotten rid of, not to torment you with them, but to let you know, hey, you're still feeling these energies, so they practice more to pull it out of you. But because we're facing a lot of adversity in life right now, it can be very challenging, and you can feel overwhelmed, and you can just feel like, you know, how am I going to pull all of this off with all these challenges in front of me? So we invited Jack, because if anyone can inspire you, it's Jack. Jack is a shaman, a teacher, a diviner. He throws bones. He's a counselor, and he's blind, and he does not let that challenge stop him from working his magic, doing his miracles, and being of service. And so I thought it would be very way cool to talk to him tonight. So Jack, say hello. We are so honored to have you.
Hello. Thank you for having me on. What an honor.
Oh, it's just, the honor is ours, believe me, because I don't know about everybody else, but I personally am living the Tower card, and I am hustling and working with my hands, my fingers, my toes, everything to get everything done and not feel overwhelmed and to, bat all these challenges that are coming at me from every direction. And so it's so inspirational to hear your story, because it gives the rest of us hope that, yes, we can overcome things too. So why don't you tell us about your spiritual journey and how you got started on it?
Great. Such a large topic.
Take your time. We've got 2 whole hours.
Well, go ahead and feel free to prompt me if you feel like you'd like more information about an area that I kind of drift off on. But well, the spiritual path that I'm on has been with me since the beginning. My earliest memories of contact with the ancestors and the helping spirits is at about age 5.
Wow.
And from that time on, it's been constant contact, and the forms in which has changed drastically through the years. My practice now looks nothing like it did. Well, obviously, when I was 5, I wouldn't call it a practice at that time. It was more of just picking up and having those, I guess we would say, extra senses. And at that time, I still kind of thought that everybody was doing the same thing, that this was a normal thing. But the more that I brought messages out to people, I realized, no, this isn't a thing. By their base judging and gauged on their reactions, obviously this wasn't something that everybody was doing.
Right.
So that came as a hard lesson. As I hit adolescent age, the messages really came through, and I had no one there to guide me on when to deliver the messages, or when to hold them to myself, or when to use the knowledge for some other purpose.
Right.
I didn't come across a teacher till I hit high school, and there was an aide in one of my classes that recognized the fact that I had these extra challenges, because at that time they certainly were challenges.
Right.
That I call gifts now. And she kind of walked me through it. She walked me through that. Kind of helped me understand what it was that I was going through, and how to navigate this physical plane with these extra contacts and with this extra knowledge and senses and all of this. And I've also been working with energy from about as far back as I can remember. And that's come in lots of different ways. But as far as a path, actually, I didn't start taking on a path until I saw my teacher, and we didn't share a path. She was more new age, but it helped me understand some of what I was dealing with, and it nudged me sort of in the direction of, I kind of identified as a druid for a while, and that probably stuck with me for, I think it was probably about 13 when I began identifying as a druid. And that went through until probably about 17, at which point in time I decided, no, obviously, this isn't exactly what's going on, although some of these elements fit perfectly. But at that time, I started exploring all different forms of witchcraft, just as an art itself. And had a great understanding. I could understand witchcraft from the terms of energetic work. And one of the common ties that has always existed through all of my practice has been that spirit work element, working with the ancestors, working with energy forms other than the ancestors. And so that has been a common element throughout my practice. At this point in time, I still identify as a witch, but I more lean towards the shamanic workings of things. And my practice is really based on community and bridge building, and creating art, and trying to hold space for those who are vulnerable, trying to make sure that there is room in the circle for everyone.
Right.
So I mean, that's just a piece of what I'm doing now, but that's I guess that's in a nutshell sort of where I've been. Obviously, I've glossed over very much of
Right, of course,
what's happened, but
Wow.
I think that's awesome. And I love, I think all of us have taken, not a straight path, but a winding path through our spiritual journey. And, we stopped off at the town of Druid, and then we may stop off at the town of Wicca. We may stop off at the town of Hindu, pick up some things from the gift shops and roll forward, So I think that's actually normal. To just kind of go through and wind and take a little bit here. I actually think that we are doing like refresher courses, so I might, because I believe we've already been every spirituality, and so I think maybe you have to stop off and do a little refresher with the Druids to remember some things, or with the Wiccans, or whatever it is that you're doing. So I think that's pretty normal, don't you guys say?
Absolutely, because you've heard me say many a time that I believe that we're all born in some sort of a spirituality pertaining to witchcraft or something like that, and it's just a matter of when or if you decide to pick up the torch in this lifetime and work with it or not.
Right.
So if it visited you at those ages and it came to you in different forms, and I do believe that we need to go through those different paths to see where do we end up. We evolve. We don't just, because I don't think we are.
That's right.
Yeah, as spiritual workers, we do not. It's not meant for us to stay in one stagnant position. So we kind of live and learn, and we go through, and at the end comes out this whatever that's left that you have encompassed with everything, and just kind of said, well, this is my craft, this is my witchcraft, and that's all it is, It evolves. So I think that's really wonderful.
An interfaith pagan. I attend both a Unitarian Universalist church and a metaphysical church on a regular basis. So I mean, I'm really very much so for bridge building and keeping community ties. Because we all have things to bring to this. We all have flavors to bring to the soup. So
yeah, that's really wonderful. So you reiterate and just kind of confirm for me what magical or spiritual tradition did you end up being at the end?
Oh, where I am now, that's such a difficult, it's hard for me to respond. I say that I'm a pagan, but I really identify as a shamanic witch.
Yeah, that's cool.
Actually,
that's really where I'm sitting at this point in time.
Right.
Some people refer to me as a chaos magician. I don't know. I hesitate to label myself because at this point in time I seem to be so transient with things. But one thing that seems to be also consistent with my spirit work at this point in time is my identification with the rainbow. And the rainbow as a filter, and remembering when I'm sitting at a table with people that all of the colors of the rainbow need to be present. And I mean that in so many different ways, on so many different levels, in so many different depths, that I don't know. I almost consider myself a rainbow warrior. At the same time, I don't even know what
love that.
That's awesome. That's awesome when you think.
I love that. Oh, I have to write. I'm stealing that from you. I'm just letting you know.
Yes. And just so you know, I do believe that in my headspace, because I mean, my thoughts on it has always been, again, the shamanic part is not just relegated to certain peoples or certain groups. I think we all, as witches, we kind of walk there. As light workers, witches, whatever it is, we all walk in that shamanic path in one form or another. So I encompass all of it as well. So I think it's wonderful that you are saying it that way, because we have to journey there. That's what we all do.
Yes.
You know,
And I think that shamanism is some of the oldest workings on the planet.
yeah.
It's so down and dirty. It's just what I do. I mean, I also identify as a root worker, but you know, none of these seem to fit on my head completely accurately, except for that's why my bio, when I write it, it turns out 4 lines long of a bunch of adjectives. I have no I just hate them. I'm a child of the universe.
Well, you know what? That's what I call myself, as a universalist, because I respect and I embrace all spiritualities, and I work within all of them, and I think it just sums it up. I'm a universalist, and that's the way it is.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we all sum it up in whatever ways that we come up with. Me, I consider myself just a witch, and a witch that encompasses all of it, because witchcraft to me covers all of that. So I'm just like,
sure it does.
You know, so it's all good. However you name and label yourself is so wonderful, though.
It's perfectly fine.
Yeah, right at this point in time, I kind of wear the names as a garment. So
Yes, that I know and that I acknowledge heartily. Absolutely.
Well, one of the things I'm glad you brought up was the bridge building. I'm kind of moving away from our questions that I had already planned out, because you know, I don't know how much social media that you go on, but in our community there is a lot. Now, there is a lot of community where people get along just great, and we all work together, but there are factions in our community that are constantly picking at each other for whatever reasons they do that. And in my attitude, you know, I've been trying to come up with ways to do some bridge building, because I do believe we are all basically doing the same kind of work, using the same kinds of tools. And so I don't think one is better than the other, or, you know, to me, it's all the same. We're all in the flow of nature and the flow of power. But there are those that are warring with each other. And I'm just wondering, the 3 of us here, while we're sitting here on our panel, if any of us can come up with a way or ideas to do some bridge building. And if you, in our chat room, have some ideas or thoughts on that, I would love to hear them, because I do think that we should put some effort, if we can, into bridge building. I'll tell you why. For one thing, you know, whether you call yourself a witch or a shaman or whatever it is you call yourself, you know, there are factions out there that are trying to destroy us already. They've already started the witch hunts again.
Right.
And they're doing all kinds of things, causing all kinds of problems. And we do need to come together as a people, because eventually we're going to have to fight back. You know, it's always been the enemy's idea to divide and conquer us. So we don't even know if the people, let's just say, you know, if there's a battle going on between 2 different sects of pagans, we don't know if it was actually a third party who wanted to stir the pot that started it, to start a fight, to separate them, so that they could go in and slowly pick us off one by one. So I think it is important for us to come together, and not just come together as a community of getting along, but also as a community of support. Because I've said this before, and I will continue to say this, that automation is taking our jobs.
Yeah.
They're going, and they're not coming up with replacement jobs for those jobs that are being taken over by technology and artificial intelligence and all that stuff. And so we will probably have to maybe go back to a time where we use our crafts, where we barter. You know, I might trade Goddess Star some bath salts for some candles, or things like that. And we're going to need to be in touch with each other and have a network, of support. You know, I don't mean to sound all dire and grim, but the truth of the matter is that next year, the planet Uranus is going to go into Taurus. And the last time that happened was the Great Depression. And so I'm seeing all these signs of people losing their jobs to technology, and the fast approaching Uranus and Taurus transit, which is an 8-year transit. You know, I think it's time for us to come together and create communities and networks where we are going to be supporting each other while we're on the front lines, helping people through these tumultuous times that are coming, because they are not replacing these robotics jobs, the human job portions of them. And not everyone is science minded. You know, it used to be we had mechanics who could put an engine together, you know, piece by piece like a puzzle. Now you have to be an engineer, because all the cars are run on computers now. So there goes that trade. They also have, one of my friends was showing me articles that now they've got these fruit picking machines that are going to displace the migrant workers. They're not going to need them anymore. And so they're slowly but surely cutting out the human jobs, which means, you know, how are people going to pay their bills? We may have to go back to a barter system and live on a piece of land and grow our vegetables and have a chicken. I think that we are supposed to come together. Yeah. And so I know that was very long-winded what I just said, but I'm very passionate about this with the Uranus and Taurus coming up and jobs being replaced through technology. Even Macy's, one of our Macy's here, which is an anchor store for one of the malls here, shut down. Macy's.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to do the push for online.
Yeah.
And so it's really important for us to stop fighting with each other and look at the future and come together so that we can come up with a plan on how we're going to take care of each other, because other religions have plans. You know, you can go, there are a lot of Christian churches, they have food pantries, they have scholarships, they do things for their community. The same with Judaism, they do things for their community. Yeah. We've got to come together, and we've got to form food pantries or scholarships or some sort of charitable resources for people. And so with all of that said, does anybody out there have any ideas on how to do some bridge building?
That you know, it's interesting, because in a way, when we started Witches Fest, I don't know if all of you guys know about Witch Fest here in New York City. We did it for two things. One was to do a fundraiser for us to have a physical church, because there's none. I don't know of any pagan churches anywhere in the United States. I hope there are. But anyways, that, as well as the whole intent behind it too, was to actually bridge our pagan communities together, whatever spiritual path we're doing, and have us come together and able to share our differences, able to offer up and say, you know, if it was Jack there at Witch Fest, he would say, this is what my spirituality is, and I'd love to share it with you in whatever form or ways, you know. And, you know, I mean, that was our suggestion with it. It doesn't always work, or bringing people together as much as we would love to. And even with Witch Fest, we collect food, as you know, non-perishable food, but we give it to someone else's pantry because we don't have our own pantry. You know, so Goddess Rhonda is right. We have to learn eventually to have our own pantry, our own everything, and kind of go with it from there. And we meandered off and into other things.
Yes, we did. But, you know, and we won't spend too much time on this, because this is actually about inspiration and Jack. Yes, but I would love for you guys who are listening to, you know, to really think about these things. And if you come up with ideas, you know, you can either implement them yourselves, or you can message me and Goddess Star and say to do a show on it with your ideas or whatever. We'd love to hear about that. So Goddess Star, I know you have questions for Jack too, so I'm going to let you go ahead and ask.
Well, actually, I think you were supposed to ask him about his, you know, but you went off into other parts.
Oh, I went off on one of my tangents?
It was you to ask him that particular question again.
Yes, you are absolutely right. It's my turn. Okay, so Jack, I've seen a picture of you in these beautiful red and white robes that are actually stunning, and I would love to know what they symbolize to you.
I believe in the photo that you're referring to. I'm wearing a kaftan. I guess I kind of like to dress sort of ritually on a regular basis.
Good for you.
I see all of life as being sacred. So I'm not always dressed like that. On occasion you see me in jeans, but most of the time I'm in something that looks like I'm ready to step into circle. Or ready to do work of some sort, which, to be honest, most of the time I am. But as far as that particular garment, that has been worn in many ritual settings. That particular garment, I get asked to represent water a lot of times in ritual, because they like to put big bowl of water in front of me and have me represent the sundown over the ocean. And after doing that in an elemental ritual once, a rite of passage, rededication rite that we put together. So long story short, that's just my preferred dress. Again, I guess because it feels safe, it feels right to me. So
Yeah. The other thing
That's
we all
beautiful.
have different things that we just have to wear when we go for ritual, and even though our regular clothing works, once you put those things on, it puts you there, front and center.
Right.
That's awesome.
It does. It does. Yeah.
I guess that I'll ask that for you, Rhonda, right? Goddess, the blind.
Yes, I screwed up the things. Go ahead.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you, because when Rhonda told me how you were blind, I'm sure people ask you about things, and I'd love to find out. But how has being blind affected your work, or hasn't it in any way?
Well, I have not always been blind, but I have always been legally blind, which means that I could never see really good. I could read regular print as long as it was leaving ink smudges on my nose when I was younger, but I used to ride bike with friends and everything. But my first eye surgery was at 7 months old, and then I started wearing glasses at 9 months old.
Wow.
And then through my teen years, I went blind 3 times, 3 different ways. So it presented itself 3 different ways. And just before I turned 18 is when I actually lost my sight fully. So there was a time in my practice where I did things slightly more visually. For instance, when I was younger, I actually saw auras with my ocular eyes, but now when I experience auras, oh wow, this opens up a whole different conversation. Okay, like the visualizations that people, screensavers and things like this that people see on their computers, I have much more complicated versions of those running all the time. So I'm seeing images. Sometimes they're precog. Sometimes they're just they're creative ideas. Sometimes it's just kind of a random moving screensaver sort of thing. But when I see auras, that starts to change colors for me now. And I can, especially when I'm in a certain proximity with the person, I start seeing their aura filter into what I'm seeing visually. So, okay, that's kind of tangenty, but I think that the blindness, one of the things that it has done is that it is one of the pieces of me that makes it so it's very difficult for me to not keep other people who are different. Not that everybody's not different, but people who are variant. It makes it so it's much easier for me to keep everybody in mind, or much more people in mind. I should not say everybody, because I'm always going to forget somebody.
Right.
But there are elements of me, there are layers of elements of me that keep me in that mind frame all the time, but I think blindness is one of the most prominent because I notice it more frequently. I think it's one of the things that people identify with me first and foremost. Sometimes that's insulting, sometimes it's helpful, but I think it's one of the first hats that people see me wearing is my blindness. So sometimes that can cause misconceptions about me just because of their misconceptions about blindness. But as far as what it has done for me and my path and this road that I'm walking, I think that it has made me who I am. It's forced me to come at things from a different angle. It has afforded me the opportunity to not live in illusion. I don't judge by sight. I judge by content. I'm not fooled by my illusion. So
it sounds a lot like it has actually.
It is a barrier, though. Sometimes it's a barrier to information and to access. Transportation, obviously, is a concern. But in many respects, I think that I would not be the person that I am if I had not experienced the vision loss in the way that I have.
It has enhanced you, though, not detracted, but rather enhanced your gifts and who you are, you know, and you do exactly like you said, exactly who you are right now. That's wonderful.
And how is it? I mean, I think it's great how well that you have worked with it. And I also think, you know, when we are forced with an issue that, you know, you just can't overcome, you know, Goddess Star, she has lupus, I have Lyme disease, and we have a lot of physical challenges and health challenges that we don't have time for, so we just push right through them like they don't exist, even though they do. So I think sometimes when we're forced, when the universe forces us into a position where we have to really take action, find out what we're made out of, that is a part of our soul evolving. And so, you know, with that said, and listening to all of the great ways that you've integrated this into your practice, what would you say has been the biggest challenge it has caused you, and with what you're doing?
Greatest challenge. That's a difficult question to answer. Transportation is usually the biggest, that really is the biggest thorn in my side, typically speaking. But I think a lot of times it's people's preconceptions, the notions that they come to the table with.
Right.
And it makes me wonder frequently, and I ask, do you see me? Do you, in arenas that I run frequently, and I don't push for it a lot, but it would be nice to have alternative formatted materials for printed materials, to have electronic copies. But it's always seemed to be something that you push and push for, and it falls to the wayside. There's just certain things. And I think it has to do with visibility, and I think it has to do with frequently people's lack of comfort with me personally. And not me personally, but with my blindness. Because I notice a lot of times energetically, that's where a lot of people's discomfort centers on, or with their questions on blindness. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that up until 30, 40 years ago, a lot of blind people were not seen. They went to school in institutions.
Right.
So I think that they weren't visible to society. And so in some ways, we're kind of new.
Right.
And that's not completely true, but it is, I think that's a piece of it. And I'm very comfortable with my blindness, but I do know that some people are not. And we're all individuals. We all have our areas that we're more comfortable with and other areas that are taboo for us. So.
Right.
And,
I don't have much for taboos, though.
Yeah, right.
I'm an open book.
as you mentioned, some of the challenges and things like that. I was just kind of wondering, how did you, or what did you do to overcome some of the challenges that you've been faced with? Like, for instance, people not being comfortable with that, or just even getting around. I mean, we all have different ways of or different coping mechanisms and things that we deal with. Would love to hear some of yours.
Well, as far as helping people become more comfortable, I usually use humor. I try to show them that I'm very lighthearted about this, as long as you're coming at me from a place of love. And that's usually I am so open to just about anything, as long as it's not perceived as an attack, as long as it's coming from a place of love. And that's usually how I try to approach people as far as blindness issues, is with heart-centered humor, and just try to show them that it's not a big deal. It's just another one of those things, and we all have our things. Transportation is manageable, but it's tricky. I try to carpool with people, but I rely on paratransit, and that's the one thing that you'll hear me come back to griping about time and time again. But I will not take teleporters if they come up with them during my lifetime. I have no interest. So,
at any old time, because those paratransit will make you complain all the time. Can I do beam me up, Scotty? I would love it. Get me there without all the bullshit. Either that, or I want a car. Get me there without all the bullshit. Beam me up. I'm ready to go. I don't want to deal with paratransit anymore. I've been there.
For passenger cars to be more prevalent, Google cars and these things. I know a lot of people are scared of them, but the blind are waiting for them. I'm looking to get out and cruise the streets too. So
I can dig it. I personally am really looking forward. I don't know that we'll have it in my lifetime, but if I could teleport to, I think I'll go do the show from Goddess Star's appointment and then apartment, and then within 3 seconds I'm right there in Goddess Star's living room, or I could go to Georgia in a second. I would rather that than flying. I think it'll be safer than actually flying in the air. You
made me think about that movie Jumper. I remember every time he wanted to go somewhere, he had a picture of it and he just jumped to that area, and I was just like, yes, I would love to do that.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I look forward to that, but they are doing more. In fact, I think the Google cars, is it a Google car or an Apple car? It's a Google car. I think they're actually out there really operating now, They
are, yeah.
So I think that's cool, and hopefully that will become, but then, then we also have to say that also brings us right back to, they're going to be replacing cab drivers. And so then what are the cab drivers going to do? And then they'll have the buses that drive on auto. And then what are those bus drivers going to do for a job? So I just want to throw that out there, because I know I keep harping on it. And I'm going to keep harping on it until everyone realizes that the trouble that we are fast approaching. But with all that said, I do understand, with the car and transportation and all, as being probably your biggest challenge right now. But what do you feel is the biggest challenge that you have already overcome, that you've said, you know what, I've done it, I've conquered it, I've put it behind me, and now I'm moving on to the next step?
We keep asking you these questions.
Yes, we like to really get in there with our questions.
I know. This one's another tough one.
Take your time.
Biggest challenge that I've overcome that's behind me. Wow, that's a toughie. One of the biggest challenges that I faced was getting people to finally accept the fact that I was blind, and that was the end of the conversation. When I first went blind, I think we were about 3 months after the surgery, and I still had bandages on my eye. We'd pull them off and do my eye drops. But since I'd already had multiple surgeries prior to that, I knew kind of what it looked like when the vision had been restored. And I kept telling everybody at this point in time, I'm not seeing any light. I'm not seeing anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it really kind of got frustrating because at about 3 months, again, they're telling me, no, you got to wait for a year. And 6 months goes by, and I say, I'm not even seeing fuzzy light. I have no light perception. And at this point in time, I'm getting frustrated telling them, look, you're not listening to me.
Right.
I hear what you're saying, but I should be seeing something. And then a year rolls around, and I'm still telling them. And it was about 18 months that I finally sat my mom down, and I sat the eye doctor down and said, you're going to both have to deal with this. It's not coming back. And I know that's not a very good challenge to share, but that's really a difficult question because
I think that is
I might be currently facing my biggest challenge today. So
See, there you go. What is that current challenge right now?
at this point in time, there's not very many areas around in my life that I can look that it doesn't seem to be on fire. So at this point in time, it is like many other people seem to be energetically, and we'll blame it on the planets.
yes.
Yes, the power, even that power right now.
People seem to be in this grand time of transition.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that the other side is the butterfly, but we still have to go through this chrysalis phase.
Right.
And I just recently received my Reiki attunement, and some people are going, that's what's doing it. Like, if I knew that was coming, I would have prepared a little bit better for what was coming. So, so at this point in time, I think that I am facing that biggest challenge. So,
Awesome. I mean, it's awesome that you're facing that biggest challenge, but I think it's one that we're all going through together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it also shows your strength, your inner core, your strength of who you are and everything, because you're coming out at the end of it, whether or not you realize it, you're coming through that and you're facing things that other people are not. And we're all facing our own current challenges with it, and we all have to deal with it in one form or another.
That's right.
How we do it. So I think you sound like you have been dealing with each one that comes at you and coming out right on the other end going, okay, I've survived it and I'm moving on.
Absolutely. And one of the things that keeps me going is the spiritual practice,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that I know that I have so many allies, both here on this plane and all over. I mean, that's one of the things that keeps me going, is knowing that the ancestors are behind me and they're rooting for me. And now I have some deities that have some expectations out of me. So,
Right.
So I mean, I am being walked through this. I'm not walking through it alone in this, I understand. And I know it's all part of the growing process, and it's growing pains. But, all of the challenges, they're all there for a reason. This life, we're here to learn. So
Exactly. And it's these challenges that are helping our souls to evolve. And it is a lot of people that are there going through, literally, we're living the Tower card right now in this time of great transition. And, we're not going to be out of the Pluto retrograde influence, but the post shadow doesn't end until the end of January of next year. So it hasn't even heated up yet. That's probably what's the most frightening thing, is we're going through all this and we're just at the beginning stages. It hasn't even heated up yet, and then we're going to be throwing Uranus in the mix soon too, which Pluto and Uranus can really revolutionize your life. Either you're going to have a complete nervous breakdown and throw in the towel and say, that's it. Or you are going to come out of this with this big red S on your chest and a blue cape, and you're going to fly away on your broom in victory, because this really is.
The Phoenix, goddess Rhonda.
There
the
you
Phoenix
go. The Phoenix. I actually have phoenixes tattooed on my back because of all the times I've risen through the ashes.
I see it coming. I see it coming. I see this is a future thing. So.
It is. And so it's like whatever way you turn, you have to have your swords up and ready, because there is so much going on. But I'm trying, instead of my way of coping, and if you in the chat room have a way of coping with this energy, or Jack or Star, my way of coping with this, because I do know that, we've got a long ways to go before this is over, and Uranus is going to really pretty much triple it, put it on steroids, basically, is I am looking this as a universal final, like a final exam, where the universe is saying, all right, Rhonda, over the past 55 years, we have taught you many things. Now let's see what you've learned and how you can apply them, and see where we need to, if we need to shore you up in some areas, give you a little extra training, or if we can go ahead and promote you, you can graduate to the next level. Because to me, it's no different than, trying to make your way through high school, and you finally get your high school diploma, and then you finally get your college degree or whatever. As we go through each stage of our education, just in the regular world, from nursery school through elementary school, through middle school, through high school, and so on, as we progress through each level, those lessons don't get any easier. They get harder every time you go to a new level. It gets harder and harder and harder and harder, more challenging, I should say. And so I'm looking at this as right now, this is like the granddaddy of final exams, to see where we stand and how we've learned our lessons, how we're able to apply them, where maybe we need some more work or some more help, and where we're going to be, how the universe is assessing us, and where we're going to be placed once all this is over. So I'm looking at this as a challenge or a really hard final exam that I'm determined to win. It's more of almost like a competitive kind of a thing. Like, I'm not going to let you guys destroy me. I have the skills, I have the tools, I have the resources. I'm going to go ahead and use them. Now, that does not mean that I'm always like this all the time, looking at this as, I can do this and navigate this. I get pissed off like everybody else. I'll cry or I'll scream at the universe, like, how could you do this to me? Or I'm trying to get all this stuff done. And, I do have my moments, but then I have to employ my tools and my resources to bring myself back down and get on with the mission that I'm supposed to be doing, and sort of step out of the emotion part of it and step out of the fear part of it. And so that's how I'm coping with it, is looking at it more of, a competition. I've been handed this set of this set of tests that I have to take, my SATs, as it were, my universal SATs, and I'm determined to pass them. And so, but I do have to be mindful when I feel myself allowing my emotions to take over, and fears and things like that. That's when I do have to be the priestess and the healer for myself. The other day I actually sat down and for the first time in a really long time, and did like an hour-long healing session on myself. I'm usually healing other people, and I do quickies for me. But I said, you know what? I think I really need to do some deep down healing on myself. And so I did. And that, I felt like $1,000,000. I've created peace candles. I've got protection candles going. I'm doing my work and employing my tools and resources and trying to keep that focus and my mindfulness. So that's how I'm coping. How are you coping with this tower energy, Goddess Star?
I'm kind of between you and Jack, because I'm seeing it as that part of me evolving. And a lot of this tower right now, I've been faced with challenges that I've never faced before. And I'm sitting there in the middle of it going, are you freaking kidding me? Okay. Why is this coming at me? I've even called you and go, Goddess, and
It's
I'm like,
true. She has.
before, and I just said, okay, and I talk to myself, I talk to you, I talk to whoever else, and I kind of come back in the middle and I kind of said, okay. And then when I call you again, I go, okay, I got it solved. I did this.
Right.
And you're like, see, we found an answer, really easy, which we know was not easy.
Right.
But I do believe that it's part of us evolving into that better worker, that better witch that we want to be, and coming out on the other end and knowing in that clicking it in there and going save or save as,
Right.
on like a computer, and we're going future wise. I know exactly what to do. I've evolved. I've taken whatever it is because that tower has been coming. That tower has been coming up, literally like up your butt, going wherever, and you're like, really? You know what I mean? And you're like, okay, and you come out on the other end and you're like, okay, it's all good. I learned something new and I learned how to handle that particular situation again in the future.
Right.
And I'm sitting there going, I can't believe I was freaking out. Look at the solvent. It's so easy. I'm even saying it's easy at the other end, and it wasn't easy at the time. So
no, it wasn't. But
I think it's just our stages. We are going through our stages to evolve and be that better witch, and we have to learn to, unfortunately, accept it and move on. It's how it's just like when kids grow up, they go through different phases, and it's different phases that we have to go through and come out on the other end. And you're like, wow, look at me, I've grown up. I've grown up, grown wiser, grown everything. So it's all good. You kind of sit there afterwards going, it's all good. But we're dealing with a lot of stuff daily, and it does seem right now to be, wow, it's just coming at you one after the other. You solve one thing and another one comes at you. You're like, okay,
right.
let's keep it coming. Keep it coming. It's okay. I can. So exactly. You're like on autopilot, just going, okay, this other one, I'll just take that. We're all doing it. This is what it is.
I'm starting to feel like a quarterback. I don't know much about football, but I just feel like I've got to have my arm up, and I'm running through the line, knocking people out of the way, trying to get to the goal line. It's like begging people out of the way, jumping over people. I'm just gonna make it. I'm gonna make it. And you can feel like that, but sometimes it's better just to say, you know what? When I feel overwhelmed, I have to make lists. I have to make a list of everything that needs to be done so that I have a visual in front of me that I can say, okay, you know what? These 3 things can wait until next week. These 3 things I can do on Wednesday. I got to do this today. And then I focus on that. And that helps me to take away some of the pressure, because my mind is like, okay, you've got this coming up and this coming up and this coming up, and you're not ready for that. And you didn't do this yet. And blah, blah, blah. And it's all heaping in my head. And it's all swirling around, and I can't make sense of any of it. But when I make my lists and then I can just check things off, that makes it easier for me too, is to just work on the priority of the moment.
I think being able to share it with people that we, it was so funny today when I was coming home. I sat back and as I was walking, rather, not sat back, I was thinking, Facebook can be a double-edged sword kind of a thing, of people attacking and then people not so nice. But then I sat back and I thought I met some really amazing friends, real friends, you included. There's a young lady named Crystal, and others that I've gotten to know via Facebook, that when I am going through these challenges, that I can reach out and say, oh my gosh, freak out, and we freak out together and we solve things, or we give ideas, like when I call you and everybody, and I met you via Facebook.
That's true.
And Crystal and others, and we can reach out. We know for some reason, and I think we met each other, all of us, the certain ones, not everyone, but we know what we mean with Facebook. Majority is not. But the ones that we met and became close with, we realized that we can reach out to one another to help guide us through some of these challenges. And that's one part of it. I don't know if you see it as that way, Jack, as in terms of being able to reach out to certain people that can help you through certain challenges.
Right.
Even if it's just to vent, you know, or ran for a minute.
And that is part of us going through these challenges ourselves, so that we relate to other people who are going through parallel challenges.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it's just, you know, we all dealing with it, and we kind of reach out for one another and just feel, you know. So that's me and mine.
I agree. And how about you, Jack? What are you doing? What is your technique for coping through these tower times, as we'll call them?
Yeah.
These tower times.
Yes.
Trying to stay connected to my feelings, but not too connected so that I'm living in my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to other people's stories, their real stories, not the political garbage, none of this. They're real stories about their lives, their family, what is going on with them. And then all of my normal grounding and centering and my energy work and doing what I can. Because I mean, really, if you're doing what you can and what you know that you can do, then you can take comfort in that. But first you have to understand that you cannot do everything, nor are you expected to do everything, and you can't feel that that's on your shoulders.
Right.
I see a lot of people that feel that it's their job to fix the world. And I'm like, you are 1 out of 7 billion people. Why would you think that you are going to fix the world? What you can do is fix yourself and fix that which you touch, the other people that you touch, the things that you create, that you are putting out into the world. That's what you can do, and then hope that causes a ripple effect.
Right.
And then what we're looking at right now, I like to look at and like to think of as the backlash, because we thought we were on track, and with many things we were moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
But history tells us that when we are progressing forward, when we're moving, that we go the 2 steps forward and then we take the step back again.
Right.
So hopefully that's just where we're at right now. Again, all we can do is what we can do. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. And that's being honest with ourselves too. There's a lot of strife in my local community, spiritual community right now, and a lot of it seems to be very ego-based, which is very difficult. But it is mirroring what we're seeing on society as a whole, on a larger scale. So it's part of the patriarchy, really.
Really, it is. It is.
We need to be more open and receptive instead of trying to project our will onto everything and everyone.
Absolutely. You know, Goddess Star and I call that having the itises. Ego-itis, king-itis, queen-itis, where you just, you know, it's about ego as opposed to spirituality. And, you know, you have to like really, I know you want to just like slap them upside the head and hope that some knowledge will go into them when your skin hits their face. But of course we can't do that. You know, I just have to kind of, what I try to do to cope, because I'm not going to pretend that I do not get irritated when I see that, because I do. But what I have to do is to remind myself that these are people that are still working their way through their spiritual maturity, and that they're still in that ego space. And so we kind of have to let them do that. But still, if we can come up with ways to bridge that gap, you know, and maybe that's another way that, you know, another way that this is helping us to evolve is, you know, when we go through conflict, because conflict is what helps us to evolve, then we really do. We have to be resourceful. We have to be introspective. We have to see what we're made out of. We have to come up with new ways and new techniques. So this is also an opportunity to learn new things or try new things that can maybe bring the community together. You know, I personally, one thing that I have enjoyed through these challenges is that, you know, I love to learn. Goddess Starla, we're like lifelong learners, but with all the work that I have to do, I don't get a chance to sit down and read the 50,000 books that I've purchased with the full intention of reading that I have no time to read. But these issues and these challenges have now forced me to learn some new techniques, some new survival skills, some new prosperity skills, to try new things just in order to survive. The universe says, well, if you can't make the time, we'll make you make the time. Either that or you're going to drown. And it's sink or swim time. So if you want to sink, if you want to swim, you better go ahead and start looking at some of those books you bought 10 years ago. Or you might as well just go ahead and let yourself sink to the bottom. So now I've had to make the time to learn new techniques and to learn and implement new spells and try different things, which I'm actually enjoying because I love learning new things. But if the universe had not put me in this position where I had to learn these new things, then I probably would not have been able to progress. And to progress, we do have to learn, you know, to evolve. And so the universe may have put me in this position to force me to continue with my own soul's evolution by learning new things and trying new techniques and talking about new things and meeting new people and things like that. So I'm already seeing a benefit to all of this.
Yeah.
You know, that doesn't mean that I still don't get frustrated, but I do understand that, you know, I can't just teach. I have to learn and study too if I'm going to keep evolving. And so these challenges have forced me into doing that. So I'm trying to also look at the positive things that are coming about, you know, through all of this, because I am pushing, you know, my spiritual work, my career, everything. I'm in push mode.
Yeah.
And maybe if I had not been faced with these challenges, I would still be standing in the same place. And now I'm already further down the road. So, you know, I can look at it that way. But I do understand how frustrating it can be when you see the strife in your community and you can feel helpless to do anything about it. But you know what? This is their issue. This is their time to evolve. And we just have to step back and focus on our own stuff and let them do their thing. You know?
We just have to make sure we don't get drawn into it.
No, exactly.
Oh my goodness, I know what you mean. There's so many times you see things like, you know, I'm going to use Facebook as an example because everyone has somehow made this platform into their means of attack or ranting or different things, and it's become this whole other life form, like a thought form of its own, a thought form built by many. And you're right, you know, because a lot of it, sometimes when you see certain things, you're not, you know, it makes you want to get drawn into it, and it kind of go, you know what, I'm going to walk away because I just can't. First of all, I don't have the time, you know, I have a life, you know, because I just can't. I just don't have the time or whatever it is to get drawn into a lot of things because and, you know, I'm just trying to solve and evolve my own self. I don't have time to do it for everybody. And you can divide only so much before then you start falling apart because you're not being there for yourself. And you have to be, you know, that whole syndrome of when you're on the airplane and something's happening, you have to take care of you first with the oxygen and then help.
Right.
You know. You know, so
I was going to say it's a delicate line when you're walking the clergy path too.
Yes.
Yes. Oh my goddess, yes.
And it's meditation is the deciding. The meditation and the ancestors are the deciding factor as to when I decide that I'm going to step into someone else's pool.
Yeah.
Right.
Most of the time I'm like, no, I'm going to let them just throw temper tantrums and burn themselves out and let everybody expose, you know, let them do what they're going to do, especially when it's public, you know, shine the light on it.
Right.
My only thing, a lot of that is that, I'm going to say this and then get off that topic because we could go into that for the entire rest of the show. We want to hear more about you. But what I did want to say is the unfortunate thing is watching the so-called elders in the community almost like pit people against one another because they basically make their statements, and people who are fans or whatever of them all join and say yes, whatever it is. Like, people just don't know how to just walk away, ignore them. In other words, it's just kind of sad to watch. I'm just, but anyways, you know what I mean, all of you.
I do. All right. So
What I mean.
Going to the challenges we're facing, but I do think that's also important for us to impart what we can and give ideas and things like that too on how to cope. But we are going to refocus back on you, Jack.
Yes.
And I would like to know how you feel, if you feel, how has being blind enhanced your work?
Again, I think that what it has allowed me to do is to not be distracted by that vision, by that sight, the ocular sight,
Right, that's smart.
the things of this place. So that really stands out to me heavily, and again, it's forced me to approach the world from a slightly different perspective. So I think that helps. That helps also to inform my past. The fact that I'm forced to, quote unquote, look at things differently. But I think really the biggest thing that I have noticed myself is the fact that I'm not distracted by all the visual stuff. I think there's a statistic that says that the average sighted person is only aware of 10% of their surroundings.
Wow.
Visually aware. Yeah, that's not that impressive.
No.
I am so, I don't know. My blindness, I've been quoted as saying before, if only I had a couple more arms. And then I think about it, that's so I could carry more stuff instead of a free hand so I can see stuff with it. Instead of saying eyes, which that's very realistic,
Right.
They have technological breakthroughs now to the point where we have these cyber eyes, and also they'll be able to do full eye transplants sometime in the near future. And so there's that, but I don't know. I've went up and down this discussion for years now about do I want sight back or not. And in some respects I do, but in some respects I might say, here, take it back. I don't know how I feel about that. But again, I think it's one of those pieces of me that helps to keep other people in mind that don't necessarily fall into who we think of as the typical person.
Right.
I also identify as I am gender free flowing, so I identify as having both male and female. I don't identify as either one more than the other. I guess is what I should say there. So, I mean, I think for me, the blindness kind of is connected to that, and I can't tell you in which way or how, but I think they're all of the pieces of me that it helps me to keep other people in mind.
Right.
Almost that you being blind actually has, in some ways, because like you just said, you may want to give it up or not if given the choices, but I think it has in some way enhanced your psychic and other senses and made it stronger. What do you think? Do you think that's true?
Again, I've been in that discussion so many times I couldn't begin to tell you, and it's inconclusive in the end. It's obvious that the spirits are working with me because they worked with me when I could see and when I can't see, and they just kind of alter the way in which it's done. As far as any kind of visual components, I actually forget that I can't see sometimes. I'll wander out without my cane, and remember, just as I'm getting ready to leave the house, oh yeah, you should grab something you don't see like other people. But I kind of, what was the question again? I kind of
honestly, the question is basically around the fact that because of the answers that you've given us so far, that maybe your kindness has in some way enhances your senses or your senses.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I can't say if it has or not, because a lot of times what we see scientifically speaking is when one loses one sense, it's not that the hearing gets better, it's that you learn to rely on it more. But my abilities started before I lost my sight. Now again, I was born without full sight as it was. So I mean, but I could see, I could do all of the things. So I can't find a direct correlation necessarily between the two. But it definitely, after I lost my sight, the way in which contact is made that way has changed.
I can dig it.
Yeah.
I can dig it. Well, you know, I think personally, probably it has done something to boost up other senses, but right now you've got so many other challenges, you might not be able to realize it yet, or maybe it'll come later on when you realize that it can actually help you with other things. And so now let's talk about throwing bones, because I love that you throw bones and that you read them. So why don't you tell us about that, because that's not something you hear people, you know, you hear about people reading cards and things like that. You don't really hear that as much. I mean, certainly I've heard of it, but you don't hear of it that much. Tell us about throwing the bones and reading them, with how that works.
Throwing the bones basically is where you take a collection of objects, not necessarily all bones, many of them are bones, but it's a collection of bones, stones, carvings, charms, just a whole host of different objects. Mm-hmm. And each one of the pieces has its own voice and has its own meaning. Some of them have as many meanings as a dozen. And what we do is we take these pieces and we throw them onto a casting surface. And on the casting surface, it is divided in multiple ways, between past and present, and between different houses, the different elements, conscious of. There's so many different ways that I read the mat at this point in time, when the bones fall upon the mat. And part of this throwing of the bones, it's a conversation between myself and the person that I'm reading. Mm-hmm. The pieces themselves, because I have this animistic worldview that everything that we experience, that we encounter, has its own energy and its own voice and its own purpose. Mm-hmm. And so it's a conversation between us and the pieces, and then any ancestors, any helping spirits, any type of guides that are willing to come to the table and bring forth any wisdom or messages that they have. Mm-hmm. And this is, throwing the bones is an old shamanic practice. It's probably, from my research, it's one of the oldest forms of divination that we can realistically peg and identify as. And it seems to be almost globally, although in Africa there's there's multiple different systems of throwing the bones that include shells and different types of other bones. Again, mine have different animal carvings and all different types of things inside of mine. Technically, I have discovered that the type of bone reading that I do is contemporary bone reading. Mm-hmm. A lot of root workers do some similar kind of stuff. So, and I came across throwing the bones, well, it's part of my path now. When I was younger, I used to be able to work the fairs and just open myself up to whatever messages wanted to come through. Over the years, for multiple reasons and whatever, I cannot keep myself quite as open when I'm inside of a big, busy setting like that. It's overwhelming. And it becomes difficult to function. So in order to continue to do this sort of work, I've had to figure out a way to close myself off like 90% of the way to just keep keep the broadband down to just a single stream of information. And so that was going to require a tool that I could rely on to help make sure that I'm picking up on what it is that I'm supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I've worked with tarot through the years, but mostly with spell work and other types of work in my practice, but not for divination necessarily. So I hunted all around, could not find a Braille deck. I saw where there had been a few individuals who you could commission to create a Braille deck, but all these offers had passed. So a friend was trying to get this done for me, was not able to acquire a Braille deck. So he got me a deck of cards anyways, and a few years ago at Convocation, I sat down with a friend and we brailled this tarot deck. Well, even with the Braille on it and with all the resources at my disposal, it still comes out to be a visual medium.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the lessons tell you stare at the card and see what comes to you, and that nothing. And nothing more than when I started here. So eventually I had to kind of shove it aside and go, okay, you work well on my altar, but as far as divination, this isn't going to happen. So I started working with the runes, and very slow going for me, but it's progressing much quicker than the tarot did. And a friend created me a set that has nice, deep engraved symbols on it. So it's easy for me to read, but again, it's still slow going. Well, during this process, many, many years I've been collecting, buffalo tooths and all different types of pieces from pagan festivals and different sacred gatherings and powwows and different stuff that I've attended. They just kept gathering inside of pouches and sitting inside of drawers. And as I'm walking down this path looking for this tool, I keep getting nudged to gather these pieces together, and I start gathering them together, and the different things that they meant to me personally due to the circumstances that I acquired them, or just what the symbolism of the piece itself was to me personally, this started resonating with me. I still didn't know what to do with it, but I started kind of getting an idea that what I had been asking for is now sitting in front of me. I just now have to figure out what it is. And so I started looking around and figured out, oh, this is, I guess, a thing, throwing the bones. And it was funny because the whole time I started researching it, different stuff like the movie Willow, there's a scene in it where they're talking about throwing the bones, and that kept playing through my mind. There's some other random pop references that start going through my head as I start on this journey. And it has come so naturally to me, Rhonda, that it has been an absolute blessing.
Wow.
That's awesome.
It speaks loud and clearly to me, and it's been so helpful to so many people that sit with me, and that in itself is such a reward.
Right.
That's really beautiful.
That's beautiful. That is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And this is all very spirit-led. This is, I've been following the spirits, and they do not lead me wrong.
Right. That's
Really
awesome.
Before I ask you this next question, I just wanted you to know that J. Christine in the chat room said that you imparted a lot of great wisdom, and they wanted to thank you. So I just wanted to
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I know this may sound like a silly question, but I have to ask for myself and for our viewers. Are those real bones that you use?
Some of them are, and some of them are stone carvings. Let me see, I'm actually going to put the pieces in front of me in case I want to address them specifically.
That's so awesome. Yeah.
So some of the real pieces that are in here, there's a rabbit rib bone that's in this piece. There is a deer antler slice. There is a rabbit hip bone. There are, there's a deer, part of a deer leg. And then there's some bone charms and beads that have ended up in the set. Mm-hmm. There's also a crab claw.
Oh, wow.
And there is a deer hoof. I'm sorry, a deer toe. I've been corrected most recently. And I have about 7 different varieties of teeth in here at this point in time. I think I'm becoming the dentist of divination. I've got a wolf tooth and a goat tooth and a horse tooth and a shark tooth and oh wow, what else is in here? So many teeth. And then there's shells. There's a skeleton key. And again, each one of these pieces, there's some seeds. Peach seed, an apricot seed. There's a peach seed that's sanded and buffed down to a boat sort of shape, which talks to us about journeys and travel. And then there's like a black walnut shell that's half a shell. And this was given to me as a gift, but it was actually given to me because I do wire wrap jewelry as well. And this was given to me because it's attractive, and it was for that purpose to make jewelry, but it kept falling onto my altar where my balloon set was, into the basket, and I had to keep fishing it out. And after, I don't know, the 3rd or 4th time of this happening, I was like, okay, fine. You belong in the bone set. I don't know what you mean, but you obviously want to be with the rest of the pieces.
Right.
And it was in there for probably a month or so, and I'd get to that piece, and I thought that it had to do with business or finance or had to do with commerce of some sort. But every time I would get to that point in the reading, it would raise question marks, more question marks than it ever provided answers. And if a piece continuously does that, eventually it's coming out of the set. And I chalk it up to miscommunication, or I'm not sure exactly what, but this piece finally one day at an event, I said, you're either going to tell me what you are today or you're coming out of the set when I pack up. And it was the very next reading, it comes out and it's sitting in there, and the person I'm sitting across from, I'm like, getting the impression, oh, you've got this serious sense of lacking right now in several areas of your life. And I pick up the piece and I'm like, oh, you're half a walnut shell. You're talking about the other half missing, lacking. Okay, I get you.
Right.
You get to stay in the set. But then we've got, like I said, there's some dice in there. When they come up, they have different meanings. And there's a goddess carving. And one piece that I keep waiting to come out of the set that has stayed in there, and I keep waiting for it to get replaced, is a piece that I needed a technology piece. So there's this RAM expansion chip inside of the set. And now when it comes up, it's talking to us about social media or text messages, email, some sort of electronic communication, or it's talking to us about gadgets, but more and more frequently in the reading, it's talking to us about somebody who is in the IT, information technology industry, or somebody who a primary part of their job is working with computers, or that somebody who just plays on the computer for 18 hours a day. There's tortoise shell in here. Wow, just there's so many pieces, and it changes. Oh, there's alligator tooth. Like I said, some of the pieces will come into the set and their stay in there is very brief. It might come up a bunch, and then one time I pull it out, and it's broken half. There's been a couple quartz crystals that happened to, which surprised me that quartz ended up broke with some of these other materials in here. But que sera, sera. But the pieces, I don't know. They've become part of my practice at this point in time. Their voice is so prominent in so much of what I do that I don't know.
Well,
I hope that answered the question.
No, it did. It was actually really fascinating with all of the pieces that you have gathered and accumulated that you're using. And, you know, that's, like I said, that's not something that you hear much about, throwing bones. I don't know that anyone's ever written a book about it, or maybe they have. You know, I can't say whether they have or not. But I guess, you know, that is something, like I said, I love learning. And so I'm wondering, how did you learn how to throw bones, or was it something instinctive? Was it spirit-led? How did you come across this and learn how to do it so effectively?
Okay, again, it is spirit-led. It does not mean that the spirits fed me every bit of information that I have. There are some books available on the subject, but unfortunately they are only available in print, and I have approached the authors and they said that they believe they'll never be available in Kindle or any other electronic format, which big frown on my end. Michelle Jackson is one, and I think that she is one of the foremost authorities, or has one of the foremost authority, the books on the subject. And then there is another one, Catherine Ironwood, has a book on throwing the bones. And neither one of them are available electronically, so I feel so deprived. But here I'm still going to plug their books.
I love the book.
I like to follow LuckyMojo.com.
Yeah,
there's a nice blog on there that talks to us about bone reading. There are some groups on Facebook and some other websites that are good resources. But what it helps me to do is to see what other people are doing in comparison to what I'm doing.
Right.
It's nice to see other people doing the same thing. But it kind of helps you tweak your methods. And I would recommend one of those books to somebody who really wanted to get started, or kind of start poking around. You can buy pre-made or pre-assembled bone sets. I've started working events with someone who is an artist that works with bones and other natural elements. Ethically sourced, and she has started putting together beginner bone sets. It's usually between 9 and 13 pieces. Some of it's bone, some of it's like a piece of copper, and just different things like this in the set. And so that's really cool when I work events and she's there and we can offer as a special. But much of mine is spirit led. They direct me to some of the resources, but anybody who sits with me, if they'll see that you see very faint shimmers of what's going on. My basic mat setup is like what's suggested through a lot of the contemporary bone reading, but then there's lots of different layers now. Like the astrological house is getting ready to be one of the things over the next years that's going to be moving into place with the bone set. Again, the pieces I collect all over the place. Some of the pieces come into the set because I find a need, like the technology piece that I talked about. I knew that I needed something to represent this because it was trying to come up in reading. So I just never thought that this piece would linger this long. Other pieces come to me and I look at them and believe, oh, you belong in the bone set, but I don't know what you mean.
Right.
And they don't scream it to me either. In some instances, it's kind of like a guessing game. Use your intuition to figure out what I mean.
Right.
And then some pieces fall into my hand, and it's obvious that it belongs in the set, and it's obvious exactly what it means.
Right.
And those are the pieces that usually stick the best. People are starting to bring me gifts. I'm looking at boar's tooth too. I knew that I kept forgetting some teeth, to mention some teeth, but people are starting to bring me gifts like Mercury Dime. Was brought to me in a class that I taught at Convocation, and that made it into this. That represents good luck and fortune, and especially when it falls in the house of Earth. And then there's a new pentacle that's fallen into my set that was gifted to me at one of the last events as that. And people kind of, it's really nice when they think of me and bring these little pieces to me. Because not only does the piece speak to me of its individual meaning, but every time I see it, I'm reminded of the people who touched me, especially if it was gifted. Right. I'm reminded of the people who brought it into my life and interconnectedness. Then all of the different places that they come from, like I said, powwows and different sacred gatherings and pagan events. And,
I think it's really cool, Jack, with your, listening to, this is just all very fascinating to me, listening to how you do this and the pieces that you've accumulated. And I'm going to challenge you. I'm not going to get anybody's books on throwing bones. I'm going to wait for your Audible book that you're about to create because I asked you to. And, it is all about me in this world and what I want and my needs. And so I'm going to wait for you. I'm going to challenge you and wait for you because just listening to you, I hear your passion. And I'd like to learn this from you. And so I'm going to wait for you to create your Audible book so that I can get that and learn that. And even as you were talking, I was like, I really want to learn this. And the universe said, you know what, Rhonda, you can start off with the Monopoly pieces because they have a hat, they have the card, they have a thimble, they've got a wheelbarrow, they've got all these little, a battleship and things like that. So I'm going to get some Monopoly pieces to start with, but I'm going to wait for your Audible book because I believe that, you just talked about a challenge where they don't make, the books are not they're all in print. And so that's just to me is the universe challenging you to create an alternative form for other people. And so I'm going to go ahead and wait. And I guess you can have that done in the next 3 months, right?
The next 3 months, my schedule is so packed in the next 3 months.
I know, I'm just teasing you. I'm just teasing you.
If the spirits want, they have, this has been there, and I've been prompted to do a book, and this is one of the books, apparently.
Right.
Is on this subject. It's not the only book that apparently I'm supposed to be writing, but it is one of them. So I will eventually see, eventually I'm going to see what I need to do to move in that direction. I have been teaching it at festivals over the last year now.
Cool.
In June, at the end of June at Michigan Pagan Festival, I'll be teaching a Throwing the Bones class. I'll also be teaching a class called Junk Drawer Divination.
Wow. Wow.
That sounds really good.
That's a fun one. Such a pitch.
Yeah, that's so funny because I was trying to ask you if you do any other form of divination, and you just said, what is it called again?
Junk drawer divination, which basically
there you go.
You open that junk drawer, look at your playing cards and your dice, and this is a good place to start when you're assembling your bone set. Earbuds you can use as a pendulum. What can't you use as a pendulum?
Right.
I mean, there's so loose change, marbles, all different types, flatware. You can use so much. There is so much, and I'm just going to try to cover as much in the class as I can.
That is so cool.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's going to be a fun class. I'm looking forward to that. And then there's in August, the other big thing I have coming up this summer is Detroit Conjure and Folk Magic Festival. It's the first annual, and I'll be presenting at that, again, throwing the bones. And then I believe I'm co-teaching a workshop on curanderismo, the healing art of Mexico, with someone. And I'm also going to be teaching a class on uncrossing, different methods of uncrossing. So
That's wonderful.
That is wonderful. And that also sounded like a great title of a book, Junk Drawer Divination. I love it because I'm thinking of my own junk drawer and that you can barely open it, so full of junk. And now I can't wait to go and open it and see what's in there.
I know. There's so many treasures just laying around. And, it also gets you moving to clean that stuff out.
Yes, it does need to be. It's a bad junk drawer. It's been accumulating for 15 years. I need to do something. But that is very way cool. That is so very way cool. So what other services do you offer?
Different types of energy work, Reiki, different types of healing, sound healing, energetic healing, Olympias. I was just asked, I also, since I'm a reverend, I do a lot of weddings and different rites of passage, from birth to death and everything in between. But a big calling again is community. I offer counseling, and I also, you can find me on Facebook, and I take candle requests on a regular basis. So I'm constantly doing lighting for people, and that's one of the things that I do on an ongoing basis, that's free, and just to help out. I charge for my bone reading, but a lot of the healing work that I do, I have not started charging for that yet. I've been bartering for that, but I think healing is, if you need healing, you need healing. The divination that I know a lot of the people that sit across the table from me need serious advice and serious work, but a lot of people are there literally for entertainment purposes,
right?
Because they like to get readings, and I understand that fully. So, wow, it's really kind of difficult for me to sum up exactly what I do, but basically healing and divination work and clergy.
That's awesome, though. I mean, it kind of suggests that you are very multi-purposed or very diversified, and willing to open yourself up to other avenues and things that you can do. So, I mean, just listening to the junk drawer divination, just all of that is just, it's kind of like a word twister. Junk drawer. You know what I mean? But that sounds so wonderful. But I did want to ask you, where do you get the bones from? If the ones that you use.
Okay, the actual bones that are in there at this point in time are starting to come from my friend Morgana, and again, that's the person who she runs a shop called Poking Dead Things. She's an artist, and she works with ethically sourced bones and other natural pieces, such as lotus seeds. She makes malas out of those. But right now, the bones that I'm getting in this that come from her primarily. A couple other pieces have been gifts from friends. A friend from the Metaphysical Church is the one that gave me the deer bone that's in here, and another friend is the one that provided me with some of these beads that are in here. The goddess, there's the divinity piece, which is a goddess carving. was a gift from a friend. So many of them are gifts that I'm starting to source. I'm putting together other bone sets now, some that are going to be all bones. And those are pretty much being sourced through poking dead things. That's a very interesting, lots of interesting work. She's growing crystals on teeth and antler and lots of fun stuff like that. So that's where a lot of them are coming from at this point in time.
That is so cool. I would love to. You said the name of her company is Poking Dead Things?
Yes.
Wow. Because I would love to look at her lotus seed malas. I collect malas because I do a lot of mantra, and that just really resonated with me. So I'm going to have to look her up.
Yeah. She's sourcing them herself. I believe she's calling it. She says, "I'm going to the office today," and I think what she's doing is she's going up and down the beach of Lake Michigan.
Wow.
And she's sourcing all these different pieces. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm definitely going to take a look at that because I do love malas and I love lotuses. So that sounds perfect. And so how can people find you? Do you have a website or do you just use your Facebook? How does that, or do you have a Facebook page or is it your personal Facebook page? How can people who would like to contact you do so?
Well, if you can find me on Facebook, I'm Jack Mercer. You can friend me, feel free. But I also have a public page, Reverend Jackie Renboo Mercer, and Renboo actually means rainbow in lots of different languages. I've discovered half a dozen different languages. Renboo means rainbow. So something I'm identifying with these days. But anyways, I digress. I am on Facebook. Public profile page is Reverend Jackie Renboo Mercer, and that's facebook.com/REVJRM. That's the best place to find me. My online presence is still not all that it could be. I consider that sighted people stuff, and that's very that's a big challenge for me. Photographs and all this good stuff. So trying to get that under control. So if anybody wants to help me out with that. Right now it looks like it's all run by somebody who's blind. So.
And you know what? That's okay, because listening to you tonight, the wisdom that you have imparted, the knowledge that you have acquired, the evolution and maturity that your soul has gone through is just brilliant. It's outstanding. All of the wisdom that you have given is really inspirational, which was the whole point of this show, is to bring on someone who is as inspirational as you to help the other people that are feeling overwhelmed and don't know what to do, to say, you know what, there is a way that you can cope, you can function, and you can actually evolve and move forward. And so I have to, I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing all of this wonderful wisdom that you have, as well as inspiring us to move forward and learn new things. Like now, I'm really fascinated with God. I can't wait to get into my junk drawer in the kitchen and start pulling stuff out and waiting for your Audible book that you're going to have done by the end of the year. And
I feel like you're manifesting that. Thank you for your energies.
I'm manifesting it. Much of it is selfishly because I want to have it myself, but of course for everyone out there, because I just think that, the way that you do it, your protocols are just awesome, and I can't wait to hear that. So I just want to thank you so much for sharing all this with us. You've been just such an awesome guest.
Thank you.
It has been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We're going to definitely bring you back again, because you just have so much wisdom.
Audible book.
I'm going to hold you to that.
We are going to definitely have you back, because like I said, with the Pluto retrograde and Uranus coming, we haven't even heated up yet. And so we are definitely going to need your wisdom and your certainly inspiring and encouraging energy that you project, which is such a blessing, I think, for all of us to have actually gotten to sit here and feel your wonderful energy. Your energy is just wonderful, and just listening to you. In fact, I feel like you should have your own radio show, because you even have a radio voice. You know, I've got all these new career plans for you. I'm going to make a list.
You're my new manager.
Send it out to you and say, this is your plan, okay? This is your business plan.
Oh, I'm going to make a list of all these plans that I have for you, and I'll send them over, and then we'll follow up.
Too. I need an agenda.
I love agendas. I am the agenda queen. I will create for you the agenda of a lifetime.
All right. I can tell. I look forward to seeing
Oh, goodness. All right, everyone. Well, as always, we thank you so much for joining us at another Priestess View. We will be back next week again. We're so grateful to have the awesome Jack with us tonight.
Yes,
and we're also always grateful for all of you in the chat room, of course. Just your support means so much to us. And it really just, when we look at the chat room, we see you're in there, it's like, wow, here's the family. The family showed up. And so with that, we wish you a very happy Memorial Day, and we wish you an awesome week. And we will see you again next week. So until then, we say merry meet,
merry part, and merry meet again.
Merry meet again. Thank you so much, everyone, and good night.
Thank you again, Jack. Wonderful.
And thank you, Jack. Blessings to you as well.
Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you, Star.